Good evening, everyone. We're back to our monthly musical performances. They were a big hit last year. This year, to start us off, we're going to have the Symphony Orchestra, and I'm going to actually let Mr. Pinelli tell us what the students are going to be performing for us tonight.
Thank you, gentlemen. Symphony Orchestra is going to be performing two tangos, a tango lead by Albanese and the Libre Tango by Piazzolla. We were asked by the CW Coast Orchestra to do a joint concert with them coming up on November 6th in conjunction with the Schreiber Art Show that is actually going on at Tiller Center right now. So luckily for us, the two dates really worked beautifully. And the evening of Wednesday the 6th, there's going to be a reception at Tiller Center for the art show from 6:30 to 7:30, and the concert following at 8 o'clock at Tiller Center. Tickets are $10, and they go to supporting the orchestra at CW Coast University. They fund their orchestra by ticket sales at Tiller. So we ask that you come and show your support for the artists at the high school in Port Washington School, and here's just a little taste of what you'll get that whole night of all things. So please come.
I just want to thank you again. That was spectacular. And thank you to Ms. Sherry Suzanne for arranging this. Once again, it's such a wonderful thing at our meetings that we get to enjoy this. So thank you, and thank you to all the children and to the parents that were here of those children. They were really spectacular. You should be very proud. And now, Mrs. Callahan, if you will call the roll.
Certainly. Mrs. Sloan? Here. Mr. Hohauser? Here. Mr. Baer? Here. Mr. Greenstein? Here. Mrs. Johnson? Here. Mr. McDermott? Here. Mrs. Nadolny? Here. Thank you.
I'll make a motion for the adoption of the agenda, October 22nd, 2013. Do I have a second? All in favor? 7-0, thank you. We will now move to student and community comments. I'd like to remind everyone that we would ask you introduce yourself for the record and that there will be a 3-minute limit. And before anyone speaks this evening, I just wanted to correct something that has been going around, a little bit of misinformation. Might help clarify anything to anyone that's here tonight to speak to it about the class sizes and the resolution on the agenda. It is for the board to approve any classes that are outside the range of the number of students in our class size policy, either above or below it. This is not a change in our policy. We're not discussing amending or changing the policy. This is something that has to happen every year because as long as I've been an active parent and a member of the board, whatever range we use, it is not perfect. We cannot always have our class sizes within that range, though we do our best. And the class sizes are planned before the budget vote takes place. And once that budget vote takes place, that's kind of where we're at unless it's really an extreme emergency. And when we plan that, we go with the best information we have at the time. But if you remember, the budget vote's in May. And over the course of the summer, we have students that move in and students that move out and students that re-enter our school district when they've been placed outside of the district, and a lot of things change. So we do our best, but it's really important to understand that within our entire district, about 91.4% of our class sections are under or within the class size range. So I have to say I think our administration is doing a pretty good job planning, and I hope everyone who is outside of that statistic will bear with us and understand that we are doing the best and we are watching these classes in planning for next year. So that being said, anyone that would like to step up and use the mic for community comments, please feel free to do so now.
Good evening. My name is Dana Rochester, and I have 2 first graders at Daly, and I'm still going to comment with that being said because waiving the class size limit tonight has to be taken in context that the limit was increased by 2 last year. So while several classes are still in violation of the existing policy by only 1 or 2 students, if you take it in the context that in previous years the limit was 2 under, we are actually 3 or 4 students above the prior more reasonable limit. At Daly right now we have 1 class of 24 students in the first grade, and with a new student coming we'll soon have 2 classes of 25. And while we did not start out the year with 2 classes of 25, we did have 24 students in each class at school supply drop-off starting out the year in violation of the existing policy without any room to grow. I recognize that smaller classes cost money, but we are so far beyond reasonable class sizes at this point that our children's education is being compromised. Your own policy statement on class size states that the optimal number of students for K through 2 is 18 students. Our children have 30% more students than what you have all deemed optimal in your own policy statement. I do not understand how that's acceptable. Your policy states that the optimal number for grades 3 through 5 is 20, and for middle and high school, 22 students. Our first graders have more students in their class than what you consider optimal for middle school and high school. By increasing the class size limit last year, the Board of Ed directly changed our children's education for the worst. If the limits had not been changed, an additional class in their grades would have resulted in 18 instead of 25, and that's a difference at their age that makes a difference. Studies have shown that a difference like that is like adding 3 months of school time over the next 4 years of their education. We all know Port Washington is a growing community, but we need to be able to absorb these students without sacrificing our children's education. I ask you all to keep in mind what you have deemed an optimal class size and how far away from that we actually are. We have an already too large limit without substance or accountability. I recognize that change is unlikely to happen for this year, but I urge the board to return to the prior class size policy for next year, or at the least actually abide by your own existing policy. Our children deserve better.
Good evening. I'm Howard Simon, a parent whose child is one of 23 students in a second grade classroom at Daly. I'll point out that the U.S. Department of Education estimates the current average class size in our nation's public schools is about 25 students, and many will argue such a number is far too large. They'll note the National Education Association recommends an optimum class size of 15 students in regular programs, especially in the early grades, and a proportionately lower number in programs for students with disabilities and English language learners. They'll also say, quite correctly, that many, if not most, researchers conclude special student populations benefit greatly from smaller class sizes, especially at younger ages. Given these points, many will call any decision to allow larger class sizes a colossal mistake. However, before reaching such a conclusion, some caution is definitely in order. According to a recent Brookings Institute review of the available research, while class size reductions of 7 to 10 students per class can have significant long-term effects on student achievement, no research from the United States compares the option directly of reducing class size to other alternative educational investments. However, a 2009 analysis found class size reduction was a less cost-effective way of raising student achievement than such things as investing in more computer-aided instruction, cross-age tutoring, early childhood programs, and increases in instructional time. Put another way, Brookings concluded the dollars school districts would need to spend in order to reduce class sizes in a meaningful fashion might be better spent on other ways of raising student achievement. The points echoed by the Center for Public Education, which notes the possible benefits of smaller classes must be weighed against the definite costs of hiring more teachers, adding more classes, buying more supplies, or all of the above. Simply put, reducing class sizes in a meaningful way would take piles of money, which, quite bluntly, neither this nor most school districts happen to have readily available. It's also worth noting that in 2011, a Time magazine column pointed out the record of class size reduction shows smaller classes matter less than teacher effectiveness. In other words, parents may be better off having their child in a large class with a great teacher than a small class with a mediocre one. Now, this is not the time to discuss how we should go about determining who is and who is not an effective teacher, but it is time we admit that reducing class size is only a clear choice in the abstract, theoretical world.
30 seconds.
Unfortunately, none of us live in that world where we can make decisions in a vacuum, nor do our children attend school there. In the real world, where spending on one thing in our schools almost invariably means scrimping on another, smaller classes are only one available option for improving student achievement, and it's far from clear at this point that this particular option represents the most effective use of our limited school dollars. Thank you.
Ms. Amy Urban. I'm here also with the issue of class size. My son is in kindergarten at Sousa in a class of 24 students. He came from an out-of-district placement. I was told at his meeting in March by people involved in the community in the school district that if there were 2 more children to register for Sousa kindergarten that year, they would definitely add a 5th section. Well, I figured that being the case, there'd be closer to 18 students in his class. That did not happen. I was shocked when I went to the open house and saw that there were 24 kids in his class. My daughter is in 2nd grade at Sousa with 23 children in her class. Those are the only 2 grades with 4 sections. I urge the board to please consider the class size and understand that it's a big impact on our children, and to please look towards making a positive step for next year. Thanks.
If there's no one else at this time, we will close out community comments. As for opening statement by the president, I believe I've spoken enough this evening, and we will now move to certificates of excellence. Ms. Johnson?
Paul D. Schreiber High School was informed by College Board that 2 students in the class of 2014 have been selected as 2013 to 14 National Hispanic Recognition Program Scholar recipients. The NHRP was initiated in 1983 to identify outstanding Hispanic, Latino high school students. This year, the NHRP is recognizing approximately 5,300 Hispanic, Latino high school students selected from a pool of over 259,000 who took the 2012 PSAT, NMSQT, PAA exams. Students recognized by the NHRP are at least 1/4 Hispanic or Latino and have a minimum PSAT or NMSQT score for their region. Students with a junior year cumulative GPA of 3.5 or higher are designated as scholars. We congratulate Alexandra Zwiener and Rebecca Schaub as scholars in this distinguished program. Please step up.
The Board of Education and School Administration would like to recognize Paul D. Schreiber High School, Salem Elementary School, on behalf of Commissioner King and the Board of Regents. Congratulations go to our district for having schools that have been designated as reward schools. Schreiber and Salem are among those schools in New York State that have made the most progress or have the highest performance with no significant gaps in student achievement. You are being presented award certificates from Commissioner King and the Board of Regents that celebrate the success of our district in supporting educational excellence. Congratulations on a job well done. Mr. Shields and Ms. Rodhan, if you would step up to receive these plaques, be grateful. What? Oh, Mr. Pernick, sorry. You can take it for him. He's not here. Congratulations. We're very proud. Yeah, accepting on behalf of Mr. Pernick will be Dr. Mooney. And now I will turn to Dr. Mooney for the report of the superintendent.
Thank you, Mrs. Sloan. I'll just offer a few other comments on class size policy, although Mrs. Sloan pretty much covered where we are with it, and I have responded to many people who have been emailing me, and I can assure you that the district administration will, as we're preparing for next year's budget, we will certainly take all of this into consideration, and we are looking to bring some relief to the daily first grade class because we do understand that that's quite excessive. in terms of all the class sizes that are over. So we have been able to, within existing district funds with some reassignment of staff, offer a floater TA to the first grade at Daly. Again, as Mrs. Sloan said, it's not a perfect solution, but we are hearing what's going on, and we wanted to provide some additional support. In addition, the district has been aligning curriculum and instruction to the Common Core standards. This was demonstrated yesterday, actually, at Parent Council meeting by Dr. Westervelt. She gave a presentation where she differentiated the standards from curriculum, from instruction, by taking the parents who were present there through a 3-day module on the Common Core ELA lesson. We'll be actually hearing more tonight from Dr. Westervelt on the high school assessment results, the status of the math pilot, and other professional development that's taken place these past few weeks, all related to the implementation of the Common Core standards. I also wanted to just make a very brief comment about In Bloom, because I think people have been hearing about it. There have been some parental concerns regarding information being provided by the New York State Education Department through In Bloom. Many of you may have seen the cover story in today's Newsday on this issue. New York State has developed an education data portal designed to provide educators, students, and families with high-quality data tools. The In Bloom project is being funded through a Race to the Top grant. That's an important notation for our district. All districts have always been required to submit student testing and demographic data to the state. Districts that accepted Race to the Top funds are mandated to choose one of 3 data portals that are contracted by In Bloom. The Port Washington School District did not accept Race to the Top funding. So as a result, we are not required to choose one of those 3 portals. Because the district contracts with BOCES to notify parents of test scores, some parent information was provided. However, the district did not include this information with its data upload last spring. There continues to be some confusion and lack of clear direction from State Ed on this issue. If new information or reporting requirements are imposed upon us, we will notify the parents and the community. And I really just want to say that Dr. Westervelt and I have really been trying to get as much information about this as possible. Again, there's a lot of confusion and misinformation that is out there, but again, it's important to note that because Port Washington did not accept Race to the Top money, we are not working, we do not have to choose one of those parent portals at this time. And again, as we get more information, we're very sensitive to the issue and we'll certainly keep everyone apprised of what's going on. Ms. Fennick is not here tonight, so I will just do a brief update on the enrollment report. The total enrollment has not changed. And we'll be addressing class size a little later in the agenda. And I would like to turn it over to our student, Kyle, for his update.
Thank you, Dr. Mooney. The Schreiber Fine and Performing Arts Departments are thrilled to announce the art exhibit currently on view at the Tilly Center at CW Post College. From now until November 11th, in addition, on the night of November 6th, the Symphony Orchestra, which performed before this evening Board of Education meeting, will be playing at the Tango Project Festival in coordination with the CW Post Symphonic Orchestra. That concert begins at 8 and tickets are $10 at the door. The mixed choir is taking a trip to the opera on Friday to see a dress rehearsal of Tosca. Mu Alpha Theta Math Honor Society induction is this Thursday at 7:30 in the Schreiber cafeteria. The football team has remained undefeated by defeating Roslyn 21-7 last Saturday. 3 media outlets covered the game, and Coach Ramsey was named MSG High School Coach of the Week, and the team will be receiving a $1,000 check from the New York Jets. The boys and girls soccer teams and the field hockey teams have qualified for their county playoffs. Girls tennis have won the county championship by defeating Manhasset 4-3. 2 girls are going up to the girls tennis state championship next weekend to represent Port in doubles. And finally, the girls swimming team won the conference championship for the 3rd year in a row. Thank you, Dr. Mooney.
Thank you very much, Kyle.
I'll make a motion for the approval of the minutes for October 8th, 2013. Do I have a second? Mr. Hohauser, all in favor? 7-0, thank you. We'll now go to the discussion item. Dr. Mooney and Dr. Westervelt.
Okay, at the September Board of Education meeting, Dr. Westervelt provided an overview of our 3 to 8 assessment results, and tonight she is back to share with us our high school Regents assessment results, and to also speak, as I mentioned earlier, a little bit about how our math pilot is moving along, and some of our other professional development activities. So I will turn it over to Dr. Westervelt.
Okay. No. So as Dr. Mooney mentioned, recently we went through the New York State mandated testing results for grades through 8. And tonight we'll take a look at our high school, and I think you'll get a clearer picture of why, in fact, Schreiber is a reward school. So the results you're looking at on the screen, to be focused, you can see that over a four-year period of time, that these are the results for 2010 through 2013 for our students who completed the English Regent exam and the percentage passing. And the yellow bar, as you can see, represents the performance for Schreiber, and you can see how well our students have done. The passing rate, of course, being 65 and above. So the percentages that are up there reflect students who achieved 65 to 84, combined with those at the distinction level, which is 85 to 100%. For mathematics, these are the combined mathematics scores for the various Regent exams. And again, you will note the green bar is the performance for our Schreiber students, again, over a 4-year period of time. And as evident up there, we are well above the state averages. And I did look at some of our neighboring districts to see how we compared, and we are absolutely on par with the surrounding local neighboring districts. Here you will note the results again for over a 4-year period of time, the passing rate for global history and geography. Also for U.S. history and government, you can see the remarkable achievement, especially this past June. And of course the sciences, again, minimal 96% and up to 98% for this past school year. When you look at our graduation rates, you'll note that the graduation rates are by cohort. That is how New York State calculates the graduation rate. And the definition for cohort is the September that a 9th grader was actually enrolled in a high school. So the 2009 cohort would be the students who graduated in either June or August of 2013. So again, you can see that the graduation rates for Schreiber well above New York State, well above Nassau County, and are quite impressive. So you can see that our Schreiber students are not only incredibly talented, as was evident tonight, but they are also incredibly bright. The persistence rates that are outlined on the chart here, New York State began to look at persistence, and the way they define persistence is students who begin college anywhere, whether it's a 2-year college or a 4-year college, a university, if they begin it in the fall following their graduation from high school, and the following fall they return to college. That is the definition of persistence. And when you look at the numbers up there, again, you can see that our students do fairly well. And you might wonder, why would they want to look at this persistence rate? According to research they have done, they have found that students who enter college and return to college the following fall are more likely to graduate and have a much higher rate of success than those who decide to take time off in between. And so now I should indicate here that that data is data that is collected by the National Clearinghouse. And it only includes those colleges and universities that actually subscribe to the clearinghouse. So the rates may be higher, the percentages reflected up there may be higher. However, colleges that do not subscribe to the clearinghouse are not included in the numbers that you're reviewing. And so again, this information again demonstrates why Schreiber is in fact a reward school and has been recognized by New York State. Okay. You wanted Common Core? Okay. I should also mention that we all know that the Common Core standards went into effect a year ago in September throughout the state of New York. At that time, the Common Core standards were required to be implemented from the elementary up through the middle school levels up through 8th grade. However, for the first time this year, New York State is transitioning high schools throughout the state in Common Core, in relation to the Common Core. So for this year, we are required to have instruction in English and only in Integrated Algebra 1. That is aligned to the Common Core. And subsequently, each year, the state plans on having additional courses that will require to be aligned with the Common Core. So for this year, we have Integrated Algebra 1 and English for those who are currently in 9th grade. Next year, we are required to transition to the geometry Common Core standards. So for students currently taking Integrated Algebra 1, whether they are 8th graders and are taking advanced mathematics or 9th graders, they will be taking 2 exams. They will be taking the Integrated Algebra exam, the one that has been in place, and in addition, on June 4th, those students will also be taking the Common Core Algebra exam. The issue of the 8th graders who are advanced, who in the past were also required under the No Child Left Behind legislation to also complete the 8th grade New York State math assessments. New York State has filed a waiver with the U.S. Department of Education in an attempt to have those students not have to participate in 3 different mathematics exams. And if the waiver is accepted, those students will not have to complete the 8th grade mathematics assessments. They will, however, complete the Integrated Algebra, what we know to be the old exam, the old Regent exam, and also the Common Core Integrated Algebra exam. For English, we are not required to administer the English Common Core assessment for this year. We are expected to align instruction to the Common Core or begin the alignment process, but we are not required to administer the English Common Core exam for this year. Next year, we will be required to. Okay. And finally, the math pilot. As you know, at the elementary level, our teachers had been piloting 2 different math programs. One is Envisions, and the other is the Math in Focus program. Things are progressing, things are going very, very well. Our teachers who are piloting the 2 programs have been provided 2.5 days of professional development, and we have added 2 more days of professional development to ensure program fidelity. At the middle school, we have 2 teachers for each grade level who are piloting only one of the 2 programs. They are piloting the Math in Focus program. And they too have been provided with some professional development, and we will be adding an additional day for professional development. The teachers have been provided with access to online resources in addition to the hard copies of the materials. And a recommendation by the subcommittee will be made at a later point in the school year as to the program, certainly for the elementary level, as the program of choice for full implementation for next September. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Westerveld. I just wanted to say first, for anyone that wasn't able to be at the parent council meeting yesterday morning, Dr. Westerveld mentioned she had been there. She did a wonderful presentation and actually walked the people through, who I believe were all parents, through a Common Core lesson in ELA for the elementary school, and it was wonderful, and it really very clearly illustrated what is going on in the classrooms with this, and it was very enlightening. And that lesson, that presentation is going to be put on our website, correct? Yes. So anyone that wants to see that, I would assume we might need some further notation on that, because I don't know if it's as self-explanatory.
I can provide explanations to go along with it.
And you said that there will be a summary from the math subcommittee on their finding later in the school year. Do you have any idea when that's going to take place?
We're expecting a recommendation by the end of April. We want to give the pilot a good amount of time for implementation, so the subcommittee can make a good recommendation for future implementation.
And Dr. Mooney, this might be more for you. I don't know, Dr. Westphal, but will that be in plenty of time for us to plan for the budget for next school year?
Yes, because we had talked about there was money set aside in this year's budget for the purchase of program, with the expectation, knowing that there'll be some program that we will be moving forward with, so we will be including that in the budget.
And the costs are similar, so it doesn't...
For the most part, yes.
Does that, Larry?
Yeah, just a brief question. I know we're budgeted for it, but once we make our decision, then we have to do some pretty major staff development so that everybody's on board. That time is factored in, so everybody can hit the ground running if we make the decision in April.
We will make sure that in order to have successful full implementation, we will make sure that we allocate days for professional development that will take place more than likely at the beginning of the school year and certainly throughout the school year.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add that there are a good number of teachers participating in the pilot, so whichever program is chosen, I'm sure that they'll support their colleagues as well.
I also thought it might be of interest to community members that don't know the makeup of the subcommittee, because it's very large and has a lot of administrators and teachers, the numbers, if you recall.
There are the teachers who are piloting the programs. There's a total of 34 teachers who are piloting the program. However, the subcommittee, I don't have the exact number, but I do know that there are a good number of administrators on there, and the co-chairs are Heather O'Shea and Mr. Shields. And I did neglect to mention that actually on October 29th, the elementary teachers who are piloting both programs will be coming together to meet together to be able to debrief and share some strategies, so, and also to allow for some vertical articulation across the grade levels.
I just also wanted to clarify that there are representation on the subcommittee from all of the grade levels, including the high school. Yeah. I think Dr. Lesser from the high school math department chairperson, but there's also, as I said, middle school and elementary representation as well.
Hi. Did you say there are 2 teachers in the middle school, 2 teachers per grade that was doing it?
For the pilot, yes.
So the other teachers, so if I'm getting this right, there's 4 math teachers, so 2 are doing it and 2 are not. Were they given an option, or how did we decide who was piloting it? And the 2 that are not, what are they doing?
Quite frankly, I think I may need to defer to Dr. Mooney. When the subcommittee and when the decisions were made as to who to pilot, I was not here. I apologize.
That's correct. Dr. Westervelt was not here, but I know that the members of the subcommittee, requested volunteers, and there was a lot of discussion among the teachers as to who was interested and who would like to move forward with doing the pilot. All of our teachers, all the math teachers, are aligning curriculum to the Common Core. But for the program fidelity, those who are involved in the pilot have to focus on utilizing that specific program.
You had mentioned that we have 2 programs at the elementary school, but 1 at the middle school. What happens if the elementary school decides and recommends A, and in the middle school we're using B? Do we run any risk of not having a program that then merges correctly as the kids move from elementary school to the middle school because it's a different basis of a program?
What we will, if that ends up being the recommendation in the end, and if there are 2 different programs, what we will need to do is a lot of articulation across the grade level, certainly elementary to middle school, and we would have to do additional professional development in order to align the approaches. Both programs happen to be aligned with the Common Core. However, what we will need to do is more focused professional development on how to align the approaches for the teaching of particular concepts, so that regardless of the material that are being used, if there is alignment in those approaches and in the strategies, then we don't, risk children not being able to do well. So it will require a lot more professional development if a different program is chosen at the elementary level than the middle school level, but we will be able to work with the teachers and again have that that vertical articulation from elementary to the middle school to make sure that our strategies and approaches are fully aligned.
I just really wanted to offer a clarification. The Envisions program does not go to 7th and 8th grade, is that correct? So that's why they're not both being, but the Envisions is also being done in 6th grade. So, but Math and Focus is being done K through 8.
Just another question. When we looked previously a few weeks ago at the math scores in the middle school, they had done particularly well in 7th and 8th grade benchmarking against the entire county. In fact, our 8th grade math class, if I remember right, had more kids in the top 4 category than any district on Long Island, I think, at that point. The bringing forward of this program, will that enhance what we've already apparently been achieving at the middle school in the math department? Or are we already there, and is this a constraint? I mean, that's probably not the right word, but we already seem to be testing out at the top where we would want to be, and now we're redoing the math program. Will we have the same or better result as a result of that?
Of course, it's hard to predict. However, keeping in mind that The assessments last year were, did test the Common Core standards, and our students did, as you mentioned, incredibly well in those grade levels. I feel pretty confident that those teachers, the math teachers particularly, understand the concepts and they're able to teach the students the material that they need to learn. So I don't think that the program in any way will hinder the achievement. I think if anything, it could add a little bit more in the continuity of what is being taught, across the grade levels.
Thank you again for the presentation, very much, very helpful. Committee reports, policy and personnel. Nora?
As I mentioned at the last meeting, at the last Policy and Personnel Committee meeting, we began to continued our work, I guess, towards one of our goals, which is discussing the practice of how tests and papers are returned by the various departments at Schreiber and at Weber. So at the last meeting, we had the privilege of having the chairpersons from math and from science at the meeting, and also the principals and administrative staff. At our upcoming Policy and Personnel Committee meeting, which is scheduled for November 8th, we've invited, and I expect that the chairs of the Social Studies Department and Math Department of both, yeah, right, yes, sorry. I'm looking at the word English, but I have a new pair of glasses and I can't see anything. The English department will be at the committee meeting. So that's November 8th, and it's an open meeting. It'll be in the Schreiber Teachers Cafeteria. We continue to work on our social media policy, which, as we've said many times, is a complex affair, and we will continue to work on it, discuss it at our meetings, and move on.
We met yesterday morning at Daily, covered quite a lot of topics, facilities. One of the subjects that had come up was the possible moving of the bleachers up around the track down actually onto the turf, but we're trying to examine what the costs are. It appears that it actually would cost more to do that than to buy new bleachers. We are still working for additional revenue sources, including parking and advertising, although the parking is fading slowly into the morass of not being able to get that done. We also looked, for the first time, talked about a capital reserve, which Karen, you had requested that we actually send a recap, and I'll write something up about that. But the goal there is to start to set aside money in advance in a fund. It requires the community to support such a vote, but there are certain expenses that we know are there in 5, 6, 7 years that rather than running into the brick wall, that we could set aside smaller amounts over a certain amount of time and then use it when necessary. We looked at it from the facility side and also just plant and equipment that we need over the long run. And the last point we touched on, we started a little bit of the budget process, including the first look at next year, but also a 5-year look at the budget with certain assumptions that were built in, which just will allow us to have a baseline from which then we can have a discussion as the board and administration as to what the next 5 years look like as far as pension costs, medical costs, salaries, contractual obligations, and things like that. Next meeting is November 4th? November 4th, 8:30 at Daily.
Larry, curriculum?
Curriculum is meeting Thursday morning, 8:30 at the Administrative Annex, and our topic will be the Gifted and Talented program.
For our next item, we will move to an award of tenure. And there are two individuals this evening, so I will read the motion. Be it resolved that the Board of Education, on recommendation of the superintendent, awards tenure to the following individuals. Effective November 17th, 2013, Brian Travers, Schreiber, teacher assistant. Effective November 29th, 2013, Lisa Tallarico, Manor Haven, teacher assistant. Do I have a second for the motion? Ms. Johnson, all in favor? 7-0, thank you, congratulations. I see one of them here. Are they both here? Can you please stand up? Is that him? No, it's here. Okay. I will now move to the action items and make a motion for items A1 through D10, pulling items C5A through C7C. Do I have a second? Chris Nadolny. All in favor? 7-0, thank you. I would just like to acknowledge and thank the South Salem Elementary School HSA and Ing Community Fund for their generous donations to our school district. And now I will make a motion for items C5A through 7C. Do I have a second? Mrs. Johnson. Any discussion, further discussion on the class size policy and the class size issue? Dr. Mooney, do you have anything?
Well, the only thing I just wanted to add is that what you have before you is based on the October 2nd enrollment report, and according to the October 16th enrollment report, the second grades at Sousa, they lost a student, so all 4 sections are at 23.
Larry?
Yeah, and you don't have to answer this question tonight if you don't have the answer, but there are some classes that seem to be on this list sort of regularly as the end classes of foreign languages where there's a drop-off into 12th grade. So I guess my question is, if those classes didn't exist, would that really save us a section? Because if they pulled into another language, would that mean we would have to expand because the other ones are sort of full? Because it begs the question, if everybody's dropping out before 12th grade, then do we want to actually run that program as a 4-year program, or do we want to restructure it in some way? But if it's not going to really save us a section, then it doesn't really matter if there are fewer people in it.
I would definitely have to consult with the high school about that, so, and I will do that.
Yeah, I mean, Larry raised a good point, and we've talked about it now for a couple years, about the actual foreign language program, and where we have kids, children not continuing or picking second languages, in fact, where they may have taken a language for 5 years, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then go to a different language and don't fill in these classes. And I believe the overall structure of foreign language is one of those subjects that we need to attack and address and just talk about a little bit more as an overall board. Because as Larry rightly points out, we've seen these classes now for 3 years on the same agenda, and whether or not it would add another section, they might pick a different elective. They could take a second English class or a second social studies, business law. There's a whole bunch of other things that might allow us to retool here. And somewhere along the line, I understand that it's unfair if a child starts in 6th grade to suddenly say that end class of AP may not be there, but at the same time, interestingly enough, just based on tonight's discussion earlier, it's a zero-sum game. We only have so much money to spend on so many things, and eventually there are 5,200 children in the district who have needs, and we're going to have to rationalize some stuff somewhere, and we just need to talk about it a little bit more and flesh it out a little bit more.
The foreign language program overall had been something, it was one of our board goals for curriculum, so perhaps we can add this specific issue into that discussion and have a better understanding of our options, and if it does save section, you know, if it's one section, is it saving something that's worth that loss to our students? Okay, I'll call to, oh, you have a question? Okay.
I just actually want to publicly say that although I am going to vote for the approval of this, I am not necessarily happy about the fact that we have to have people going over the class limit size. So I just wanted to put that on record.
Excuse me, did anybody second this motion? I did not see that. Okay, thank you.
I think we would all agree that we feel that way. But nonetheless, I will call to question. All in favor? 7-0, thank you. And now any old business? New business? And we'll have our second opportunity for the community to be heard. Nobody. Yes, one taker.
Good evening, Dave Sattinger, parent of a Weber Middle School student. I rise because I'm glad to see a lot of people here concerned about the class size, and I guess my comments are in some respects related to them and at them. You know, here we are 5 months after the latest budget vote. We found out at the last board meeting that there's a $193 million elephant in the room, which is the amount of money that this school district is estimated to going to owe retired people that it's unfunded. And we have a situation in which I think we should acknowledge that the costs every year of our salaries to administrators and teachers are going to continue to put major constraints and pressures on our budget. And so once again, I'm going to stand and encourage the board to become a little bit more proactive. I'm glad to see that we're looking at 5-year budgeting, but I really think it's time to hunker down and get together with the PWTA and the other unions and bargaining factors that affect our budget and start to hammer out long-term deals that are going to create the ability for us to fund education and the programs the way it needs to be funded. We know it's a problem. We know we need to address it. And I think what we've seen in Washington the last couple of weeks is sort of synonymous to what's going on here. We can't ignore it and then turn around every March and say, oh, here's what we project, and we're going to be $3 million short, and this program's at risk, and this program's at risk, and this team is at risk, and this club is at risk. You know, I would love to, everybody in this room that works in education is a good person. We know that. And it is horrible, the lack of funding that's coming from both the federal and state level. I wish we could eliminate the Taylor and Triborough laws so that people could once again take to the streets and we could walk together to get the funding that we need. But until that happens, we really need to get aggressive about the situation, or every year we're going to be having you guys vote on bypassing the rules of the class size limits, talking about what cuts we need to make, and we're going to have parents sitting here frustrated that their kids have 24, 25 students in the desk. So it's time to come together and solve this as a community, and I really want to encourage you to do that. Thank you.
That will close out our community comments for this evening, and we are adjourned. Thank you.